Good evening. Welcome to this forum for the Lathrup Village City election. Today is September 21st, 2023. This forum will be featuring the 6 candidates who have filed for City Council. You may vote for up to 3 candidates. The sponsor of this forum is the League of Women Voters, Oakland area. I am Neil Zeckman, a member of the League of Women Voters. I am not a resident of this city. The League of Women Voters is a trusted national, nonpartisan political organization. Our members do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping the important issues that keep our community strong. As a League of Women Voters member, I have the opportunity to contribute in a leadership role, such as this one, that has great impact on local, state, and even national issues. If you're interested in learning about how you can make a similar impact, I would encourage you to pick up some of the League's information available here tonight, or visit our website at lwvoa.org. The League of Women Voters does not endorse any candidate or political party. Views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, and the sponsors take no responsibility. The format for this forum has been established by the League of Women Voters. We ask that the audience please remain silent during the forum. Please turn off all cell phones. We ask that candidates answer the question with their views only and not interrupt another candidate. The questions are asked to all candidates and do not single out any one candidate. This presentation is copyrighted 2023 by the League of Women Voters. All rights are reserved. All candidates will be answering questions submitted by the audience and screened for duplication and appropriateness by Christine Allen and Maxine Montshine. Pages are Mike Allen and Maureen Christensen, and they will be circulating with paper and pencils for your questions. Please turn your questions into the pages. The format is as follows. All candidates will be given 1 minute for opening statements in alphabetical order. Closing statements will be 1 minute in reverse order. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer each question in rotation, unless extended by the moderator, by me. All candidates will be allowed equal time to answer questions. Our timer is Diana Piles. The candidates for City Council are Dalton Barksdale, Michaela Garrett, Jason Hammond, Barbara Canez, Karen Miller, and Alan Weeks. We will begin the 1 minute opening statements in alphabetical order, so we'll begin with Mr. Barksdale, then Mr. Garrett, then Mr. Hammond, then Ms. Canez, then Ms. Miller, and Mr. Weeks. So we'll begin with Mr. Barksdale.
Hello, I'm Dalton Barksdale. I graduated from University of Buffalo with a dual major in math and computer science, and I currently work as an engineer for the Army. I live in Lathrup Village with my family, wife, and small child. She just turned 2 in June, and going through the troubles of raising her, I understand the quote, "It takes a village," much more than I ever did before. But just like with my family and my child, I also know that it takes a village for Lathrup Village to function well and for people to come together to help it grow. I know there are many aspects of citizens that live in Lathrup Village, young, old, single, married, kids, no kids, and I want to be part of the council, to be part of the glue that keeps the city together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
Good evening. I'm Michael Garrett. Most of you all know me as Kelly Garrett. I have served as your councilwoman for 12 years, and I've served as your mayor for the last 6 years, and it's been nothing but my pleasure to do that. In addition to my leadership skills with the City of the Lathrup Village, I am currently also the campus director recently of Baker College. I hold a master's degree in information systems. I also was recently picked out of 2,000 people to represent the Detroit Regional Chamber to learn more about leadership. I've also made sure that all of you in here are taken care of from your federal agencies, from your state agencies, and your Oakland County agencies. When you turn your lights on or when your lights go out and they come back on quickly, understand that's because that's what I do, and I build relationships outside of Lathrup Village and inside of Lathrup Village. It does nothing but give me more pleasure to see all of you here, and I'm so grateful to be back on the ballot to represent you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Hammond. I'm a 20-year resident of Lathrup Village. I'm currently chair of the Lathrup Village Planning Commission, and I'm also chair of the Board of Directors at Upland Hill School in Oxford, and I'm an information cybersecurity expert. That's my job. Being a volunteer is very important to me. The City Council is a collection of committed volunteers to our city, and they have major challenges ahead. Our city has major challenges ahead, both internally and externally. And with my experience, I feel I can help City Council to find collaborative solutions to those challenges. For example, Lathrup Village needs to hire a new city administrator, but the city also relies heavily on volunteers to get things done and has some serious budget concerns and constraints. When considering candidates for our next city administrator, I believe we should prioritize candidates with experience working in a city with challenges like ours. I want the city to progress in fixing our infrastructure. We've made great progress, but there's more to do. And finally, I want to work in creative ways to market Lathrup Village to younger families and newer businesses so that we can get them interested in moving into Lathrup Village. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Kinez.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring and facilitating this forum. My name is Barb Kinez, and I am running for the 4-year spot, and I would like to be considered to stay on as your City Council member. I'm a lifelong resident with deep and strong roots embedded in this uniquely wonderful community. I am driven by problem solving, and I am especially familiar with the unique challenges and benefits of living in historic homes and communities. As a designer, I face these challenges all the time. I know how to listen, how to prioritize, how to budget, and how to execute plans and solve problems. I'm not a politician, and I'm not a public speaker, but I am deeply committed to Lathrup Village and to seeing it remain a thriving, sustainable, beautiful, and united community for this generation and for the next.
Thank you, Ms. Kinez. Ms. Miller.
Good evening. Thanks so much to the League of Women Voters and to the residents for coming out tonight. I'm Karen Miller. I'm again running to serve the community of Lathrup Village. You probably know my name if you have looked on your front porch or your email in the past week. But I'm here to share some important things about why you should vote for me and about the woman behind the name. I work for you. That has been the top priority for me from when I ran the first time. My votes are representative of the community. I need and want your input. If you have questions or concerns, I want to hear from you. If you have ideas or suggestions, I want to hear from you. There is no purpose to this position without the residents of Lathrup Village. A lot of emphasis has been placed on my no votes. I'm prepared to say no to anything that lacks the vision to protect and defend the longevity of our community. I stand behind my no votes, and I welcome conversation with anyone about it. I also believe that connected communities are strong communities built to last.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
My name is Alan Weeks. My wife Susan and I have lived in Lathrup Village for 38 years. Between 2001 and 2015, I was a member of City Council. I also served on the Planning Commission for 6 years and was council liaison to the Planning Commission for a year. I'm running again because I have several concerns. In November, City Council will be selecting our 5th city administrator in the last 8 years. Fiscal year 23-24 is going to be the 5th year where we ran a budget deficit. We ran a budget deficit, and we had, as a result, during those 5 years, we've had to spend down our fund balance. We have to stop those negative trends. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. We'll now begin the question segment of our forum. Most questions will have a 1-minute time limit, and we will begin with Mr. Barksdale. The question is, what are the important characteristics that we should be looking for in a new city administrator?
I think a few important characteristics we should be looking for are someone that is used to doing the job, someone that has the experience dealing with a city our size with the issues that having a city our size has, and someone that's really good with budgeting. I know I've heard a lot of residents unhappy with how money has been spent and that we're in a deficit. And I think a city planner that has expertise in those areas would be a great candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Same question to Ms. Garrett.
What we need in the city manager is someone that's going to be community focused, someone that will be visible around the city, someone that definitely has budget experience, someone that not necessarily has to have the experience of a city manager, but has the experience of being in city government dealing with budgets. But most importantly is someone that has community ties, someone that will unfortunately or fortunately be here or on call 24/7. That's what our city needs. We need someone that is involved with us. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I agree with Kelly and Dalton. We are a city that is reliant on volunteers. Nothing gets done in the city without people volunteering. This council is volunteers, the planning commission, any commission in the city is volunteers. So any new city administrator needs to be somebody who has experience in the past working in a city that relies heavily on volunteers. Also, our new city administrator needs to be somebody who is in the community, works with budgets, has a level of experience working in city our size. They also need to have good connections working with other city administrators in other cities so they have access to resources and information they may not be able to get on their own, and that they can pull on those relationships in order to provide the services and support that our residents need and our business owners need.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Kinez.
Being part of one city administrator that we hired and didn't work out, I know one of the qualities we absolutely need is somebody who is personable, who can bring groups together, who is fiscally responsible, who has leadership qualities, and is willing to work with the council, with the residents, and with her staff in unison so that we can work together to move our city forward. We are not divided parties. We are one united party when it comes to our city.
Thank you, Ms. Kinez. Ms. Miller.
Yes, I've also had the same experience. And I think our next city administrator needs to be a collaborator. They need to be a strong leader who is able to manage opposing views. People always have different opinions, different ideas. We need someone who is able to respect people with different ideas and to be able to bring people together, not divide us, as has happened in the last 5 years or so. We need someone that will be a listener, and we need someone that understands that residents are at the top of our organizational chart. Everything that we do as a council, everything that our staff does should be focused on residents being at the top. So that should be our guiding light. And I also think that the city administrator needs to focus on our community. I've seen a big focus on outside organizations and traveling and all kinds of things without people taking the time to integrate into our community, to learn about our residents, what our needs are, and what our resources can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And Mr. Weeks.
I want a person of integrity and honesty. I want somebody who has a strong work ethic. I want somebody with people skills, the ability to connect with our residents and city council and employees. I want somebody with strong financial management skills, communication skills, speaking and listening. Ideally, I'd like to hire from within. I'd like to promote from within. And I'd like to promote somebody who is a fiscal conservative and social liberal.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Garrett. The question is, the community is concerned about negative campaigning. Can you address this?
Negative campaigning never gets someone elected. And number one, it's too bad that it's happening. And I think that if we look back at the example of, and I'm not trying to get everybody riled up about this, but when it was between Hillary Clinton and Trump, it was a negative campaigning that someone was always trying to defend themselves. So they were always in the news. They were always being in the news, in your mailbox, on television, defending themselves. So they got more media coverage. So all press is not bad press. So I think that we need to learn how to run on our past experiences, on what we've done for our city and what we plan on doing for our city in our educational and business backgrounds, opposed to trying to attack each other.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I agree. Negative campaign doesn't ever win elections. It's not, it doesn't engender connection between residents in our city. It only serves to divide us. But I do feel that if elected officials in our city should be held to account for decisions that they make, actions that they take when they're in their elected positions. So I think that highlighting it in such a negative campaign kind of way is not great for the city. But I also think that it's important that people have access to information that they can see and research for themselves and understand what actually is happening in our city.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Kinez.
Negative campaigning has no place in this community. I've lived here 62 years. We've always been united. We've been friendly. We've worked together. We've volunteered together. We've raised our children together. We've raised our families together. This is ridiculous. It has no place here. It's divisive, it's unproductive, and we deserve better. Our residents deserve better, and we need to rise above it.
Thank you, Ms. Kinez. Ms. Miller.
Well, as the focus of a particularly vicious negative campaign, I think that it's kind of unfair. It's divisive. I spent 14 years on the Southfield Public Schools Board of Education, and while politics can be nasty, I've never seen anything like this. There's no way to defend yourself. There's no way to reach all of the people that have been touched by these postcards and emails and all of the things going around. Most of the things in the packet are untrue. But I, of course, won't have the opportunity to speak with everyone who has received that information. It's just not possible. So it makes me sad that this is what people have stooped to in this community. And I'm wondering why. Like, what is the purpose?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
There's no place in city politics for negative campaigning, attack ads. I know 5 out of the 6 people that are running for office today. I like and respect all of them. I'm never going to be somebody who's going to insult somebody in public, maybe behind closed doors. I've done that in the past. We have disagreements, but we don't have to be disagreeable. We're all pulling in the same direction. We want the best for our community. So let's just eliminate all of that and focus on the positive.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. We'll begin the next question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Barksdale. Thank you.
I understand and am all for people having their right to free speech, but personally I'm against negative campaigning and negative smearing. I find that it takes away from, at times it takes away from what the citizens want to know, and it can serve to be very distracting. It can distract from people trying to work together to meet one common goal, as opposed to slinging mud on someone else.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. We'll begin the next question with Mr. Hammond, kind of a long question. Punitive tax laws penalize built-out cities like Lathrup Village who have no room for growth, resulting in stagnant revenue from year to year, while costs rise steeply. The city is getting to the point where taxes will need to be raised or cuts in city services will be required. How would you approach this problem if it were up to you?
Well, all that is true. Things are more expensive than they ever have been before, and it is not easy to, nobody wants taxes raised in the city in order to pay for the services that we all expect and would like to have delivered. How I would address it, first thing is we got to get a city administrator hired in here who knows how to deal with situations like that, and maybe has even confronted a situation like that where they had to figure out how to do more with less, how to make city services work, be delivered at all. Like maybe not the way that we have been used to, but maybe good enough to get the job done, right? Or something like that. I also think it's important for us to, we can't be nationalistic and cut ourselves off from the rest of the world. We need to talk to other city administrators and other elected officials in other cities that have similar challenges in order to learn from them how they dealt with trying to deal with tough issues like that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Knez.
In order to generate new revenue in a stagnant environment, you have to generate new building, new opportunities. You have to expand what we can do with our Southfield corridor, how we can redevelop it, how we can redevelop our buildings. And we have to work with city administrators to rein in spending, prioritize spending, and make sure that no matter what they're doing, that the residents come out at the top of this, that services aren't cut, that we can do it on a balanced budget, and that we're always maintaining at least what we have right now in this city.
Thank you, Ms. Knez. Ms. Miller.
Yes, that is a reality, but I don't know what we need to do. I think it's up to the residents to decide what we need to do. I have talked about this for many years, bringing the community together, taking a holistic view of what our needs are, prioritizing those needs, and then finding the resources to fund what we want as a community. I don't think that an outside city administrator is going to be the answer. We have so many smart people in Lathrup Village that I think that we can solve a lot of our problems.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
In 1995, Headley and Proposition A passed, and that put just about every city in the state of Michigan in a real bind. There aren't any easy solutions to fixing our roads and maintaining our water and sewer system. Existing city council made a decision to raise a bond issue so that we could maintain our streets and our sewer system. That cost us, my wife and I, $500 a year. What's the option? The option is to let our roads, go to dirt, our sewer system to fail. But, yes, I agree. We need to, if we ever consider doing a Headley override, and if that's enough, we certainly have to go to our residents. Again, I think Headley and Proposition A put us in a real bind. I think we need more money.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
I would agree with everyone that's spoken so far, but especially with Mr. Weeks saying that we need more money. I am a fan, if it were up to me, of making sure our budget is spent adequately, non-wastefully. And I like the idea of trying to attract more people to Lathrup Village, more businesses. I'm seeing people selling their houses, and not that they don't love living here, but if we can attract maybe a few younger families that will be here for generations and decades to come by the businesses that we bring in as well, I think that would help bring in more revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. And Ms. Garrett.
So you have to remember that the key thing in this question was that we're already built out. There's not a lot of places that we can go to build new infrastructure, new buildings, or anything. The key thing is that you're going to have to do, as I just did on Tuesday, is go to the state of Michigan, go to the people that can get us the revenue. And the one thing that I did find out from going there is that there is a grant for our infrastructure, for our lead lines that we are looking into, but we never knew about it. But it's the fact of building those relationships federally, state, and through the county that you can find these kind of monies. Then it's also about going to the trainings, because when you go to those trainings, you are talking to other municipalities that are exactly like ours, where you can find creative solutions to the issues that we have. Because I will tell you right now, yes, we are in a revenue issue. And when we keep saying that we need to bring new people into Lathrup, new businesses, there is no more build out. The buildings that we have are already paying our property taxes. So we have to figure out a different way. And just like was said, we don't know, but you have to figure out creative ways by going to training and having those relationships.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. We'll begin the next question now with Ms. Canez. Some members of council want to get rid of the DDA, which I assume is Downtown Development Authority. What is your stance on the importance of the DDA and its future existence?
Well, the DDA has been with us at least 25 years, maybe longer. We've spent millions of dollars on a plan to develop our downtown area. I was to several meetings and study sessions and group sessions, and we've not moved 1 inch in 25 years. My feeling about the DDA is perhaps this could be something we could reimagine. We could put another group together. We could put more ideas for this generation now, because 25 years ago we were in a whole different position. We have new, younger people moving in, and I think we do need to include them in a decision on how our city's going to move forward and our corridor.
Thank you, Ms. Canez. Ms. Miller.
I don't believe that our DDA has been a functional group. It has been in existence for a while. There's no progress on Southfield Road. There was a huge emphasis put on marijuana or cannabis dispensaries, and at the exclusion of everything else. And I'm not sure if anyone noticed, but after City Council approved the vote of the residents and changed our ordinance, for lease signs went up everywhere up and down Southfield Road. Those buildings had been tied up in the hopes of cannabis dispensaries passing in Lathrup Village. That did not happen. We put the ordinance into effect, and now all of these buildings are available again. So I think it had been a real detriment to our economic development.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
The mission of the Lathrup Village DDA is to create an accessible village center that fosters economic vibrancy in our diverse community. The DDA has been in existence for 26 years. During those 26 years, it spent approximately $4 million seeking to create a vibrant city center. To date, it hasn't worked. I believe they've been too passive in their efforts to attract new businesses in town. My favorite eyesore next door, the school, That's a $2.75 million piece of business that I think should be rezoned. I think $1.37 million, 60 mills, that would be an additional $100,000 for the DDA. I'd like to see the DDA shift its focus to business development as opposed to what its focus now is on passively handling inquiries.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. Some members of council want to get rid of the DDA. What is your stance on the importance of the DDA and its future existence?
To be frank, I am not very well versed in the goings-on of the DDA, so I don't feel very comfortable speaking for or against it. I think that wouldn't be the smartest thing for me to do. But one thing that would be willing to do is work with the rest of council. I'm fortunate that it's not just my decision, but I love working with teams in unison and going out to see what the citizens would want and trying to make that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
The DDA, one, doesn't get funds from the residents. It is coming from your businesses. That's number one. And then we get a match, if I'm not mistaken, from the county and from the state. If we don't have a DDA, you don't get that money. I do want to kind of go into this segue and do a shameless plug, because we will talk about this on Monday, is regarding the building next door. We do really need to talk about it because the city does not own that building. That the city cannot do anything about that building. If they are violating something in the code enforcement, we can only enforce what they have done wrong. There is a deal on the ground right now for that building. There's a little piece of land, which I encourage you to go to your Southfield Public Schools meeting. There's a little piece of land in the back that's deeded to the Southfield Public Schools that the Southfield Public Schools will not have a discussion with us. We can get that land. That's multi-family housing on the floor right now if we can get that land, and we can do something with that building. So come to the meeting on Monday.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. And finally, Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I don't think we should get rid of the DDA for the reasons that Kelly was just talking about. There's a lot of grant money and contributions to the DDA's funding that comes from businesses in the city that if the DDA is gone, we don't get. Reimagine the DDA, I feel like if we're going to reimagine the DDA, well, let's just work with the businesses that are participating in the DDA and encourage them to behave differently or make different decisions and try to influence the people that are already actively involved in that. That's a faster solution to get the DDA functioning more functionally than being dysfunctional. I think we do need to get resident input on what the DDA should be focused on, but ultimately it's up to the DDA to decide where they're going to put those funds. But getting rid of the DDA is a terrible idea. Finally, again, Kelly just mentioned the school. Yeah, we got to work with the property owner, right? The city can't just unilaterally make decisions about what's going to happen with that school, but if we work collaboratively with the property owner, then we can get it to be something that's really beneficial to the city.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Miller. With the loss of 2 city administrators and multiple city staff, what would you do to improve the work environment at City Hall?
Wow, is that the luck of the draw? Well, there were good reasons for 2 of the city administrators to be gone. Sometimes people who are hired aren't a good fit for the city, and I believe that was the case, at least in one instance. So though it looks like there's a large turnover, it isn't that, unusual. And also prior to this council coming, there were 2 city administrators within about 6 months, I think, at one point. As far as staff, 2 people left. Apparently they had good reasons. 2 other people left, and the reasons they were gone. There were some things that were not great with the staff and their supervisors. So, we're constantly told that we're not supposed to be involved in day-to-day operations. So not being able to be involved in day-to-day operations, not being able to come into the office and just, have a conversation, that really inhibits my ability to even answer the question.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
The way things played out, I believe, is this. In 2016, we chose for the first time in about 20 years to go outside of our employee pool and select a new city administrator. That decision, what it did is it affected our most ambitious, highest performing city administration staff. Within the last 6 years, as a result of changes, another change in city administration, in the last 6 years, we've had in excess of 100% turnover in city administrative staff. That puts them in a bind. It takes, one, we have to bid, we have to pay more money to attract people to a city with fewer opportunities. And it takes more people to get the same job done. So our employees are in a jam. It's not an easy situation.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
In order to improve the work environment, I would first want research would need to be done to figure out what the issue is or if there is an issue. I've heard prior candidates talk about high staff turnover. I've been part of teams my entire life. Generally, if there's a lot of people leaving a team, there is one or two common issues. With staff turnover that high, it should be easy to do a little research and figure out what the issues are. And I would want to work to do whatever I could legally to address those issues.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
So the question, just to make sure I heard it correctly, was what would we do to improve the staff?
With the loss of 2 city administrators and multiple city staff, what would you do to improve the work environment at City Hall?
So what would I do to improve it is, one, I do come up to the office, even when I was not mayor. You are able to come up here to introduce yourself, to talk with them, to learn about the employees, learn what makes them tick, what makes them happy, why they're here, why would they even think about leaving, what can we do to keep them. These are the things, just like think about your own job or think about your own family. When you're worried about somebody leaving your house or not wanting to talk to you anymore, it's just common just to do some communication to find out. The one thing that I am doing right now for improvement on our employees, and I'm begging them to stay. There's literally 3 people right now that's ready to leave. So I can only do so much. My one thing is that I do come up here. I do take off their plate as much as I can. That is not a day-to-day operation. I do buffer between residents, business, and the employees as much as I can because I know that this is a tough job. I work a 40 to 50 hour a week job already and then do this. So I understand how hard it is to work in the work environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, the city council can make the city staff's work environment better just by talking to them in a respectful way, in a way that makes them feel heard and comfortable. Of course, the staff needs to do what their responsibilities are, but it is the city administrator's job to manage the staff, not the city council's job. But the city council can be welcoming and can get to know people, just like Kelly was talking about, in order to help them feel like they're part of the community and that they're not just servants to the community, right? I think that Alan's idea of promoting from within to the city administrator position, while it's admirable, if I was unhappy working in the city offices, I wouldn't want the city administrator job. So, what can we do to make the environment better for them? Just help them to feel comfortable working in the city, like they're valued by all of the residents and the council.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. And Ms. Kinez.
Being a part of a community means we all have to work together. We need, all of this comes from the top. When you have a wonderful place to work, you don't want to leave. I've been here 60 years, and staff always attended the events that the city threw, and the residents got to know the staff personally. When you have that cohesive relationship with your staff and with the people in the office, they don't want to leave because they know they're part of the community. I have extended invitations to events that I was supporting this past year, always extended invitations to the staff. I do want to be a part of them, and I want them to be a part of our community. Moving forward, I think it would be important to start looking from within. I think when you live in the community and you work in the community, you're extra devoted.
Thank you, Ms. Knez. We'll begin the next question with Mr. Weeks. Excuse me. What ideas do you have that the city can take action on right away to encourage businesses to move to our city?
Starts with the master plan. You take a look at the kinds of businesses our residents want to move into our community. What you then do is you identify growing concerns in other communities that are looking for second locations. That is one thing. If you take a look at home-based businesses in our community, and if you have a support structure like, say, Detroit SCORE that mentors entrepreneurs, we can help small businesses that are home-based develop into storefront or offices within our community.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
A few ideas I think that can help encourage businesses to come to Lathrup Village would be first doing research in what our city needs or what our citizens want, and then trying to find businesses that are in line with that. I think looking at businesses that are successful currently in Lathrup Village, I know Jagged Fork is a restaurant that I like going to, and other cities our size and businesses that are thriving there. I think seeing what sets those businesses apart. And lastly, I think it would be to go reach out to those businesses after we find the ones that we think would be good fits for our city and our citizens, and seeing what they would need to move or to expand into Lathrup Village and doing what we can to make that happen.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
Well, one is to ease the process of starting a business in Lathrup Village, and that goes back to making sure that both the people that are on the Planning Commission and on City Council understand the role of what you're supposed to be voting on. And so that is making it easier, because I know I have personally heard from businesses that they seem like they have to jump through too many hoops for that. It's also working with existing businesses. I have developed a relationship with the largest business owner here, which will be Surnow, to try to figure out what can we do to attract new businesses here. And then I keep going back to this, and I know that people are very sick of me saying this, but there are workshops that Oakland County provides that is business first and business forward, that we actually had someone that was in this building that was housed in this building, so we could go to and get ideas from them on how to attract businesses. Not sure why they left, but we also provide workshops here from the DDA and from Oakland County, telling us, wanting all of you all to come in too, along with our council, to come in to find out what we can do to attract businesses. So we need to go to these workshops, go to Oakland County and figure those things out.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I like the idea of reaching out to organizations that support entrepreneurs and small business owners. I think that if we can do a better job of marketing Lathrup Village to people like that who talk to business owners about what they want to do with their business, what's their goal for their business, how do they intend to be successful, then we can highlight the parts of doing business in Lathrup Village that will support those goals, right? And then those companies that help those, and the organizations that help those entrepreneurs will talk to those entrepreneurs about, hey, you should consider Lathrup Village as a place to go. to Kelly's point about the planning commission needs, and the city council working more efficiently with business owners when they come to us with plans to develop in the city, I think the planning commission's actually done a really good job improving that process. We're getting a lot of great feedback, at least I am as the chair of the planning commission, that businesses that have done business with us in the past and brought site plans to us, they are appreciating the efficiency of the process that we're going through right now, and I think that's helping to ease that part of the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Kinez.
That might be something we need to do by hiring someone in economic development and getting them out there selling Lathrup Village. Isn't that what other communities do? They hire people to be their economic development director. Those people are out in the communities, networking, going to these seminars, going to other communities, finding out what works, finding out what doesn't work, finding out people that didn't fit in one community, maybe inviting them into our community. There's tons of ways to bring people into our community. I know just Tom and I, when we go out to dinner, we sell Lathrup 24/7. People never hear of us, but we're always selling Lathrup, and we're always telling people we have empty buildings and come on over and visit, and we take you on a tour. We have to be selling our city as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kinez. And Ms. Miller.
I think that we need to be proactive to bring businesses into our community. We need to talk to residents and see what they want. I was on the Planning Commission for 5 years, most of that time as co-chair, and we were fed ideas by the planners. When we didn't have a strong city administrator, the planners would come and say, this business wants to come here, how do we change the ordinances? And that is not the way to do business. There's no outreach. We just actually changed an ordinance for food trucks. Is it a coincidence that a planning commissioner just got a new food truck? Those are the kinds of things that, I attended a DDA open house, and it was for business owners, and there were 2 women who owned cleaning businesses. I, at one point, had a master franchise cleaning business, and I had 50 franchisees working with me. I offered to speak with the woman, and I was scolded by the past city administrator for speaking with them because it could be a conflict of interest.
Wait, time is up, Ms. Miller. Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Mr. Barksdale. If the cannabis dispensary approval question is reintroduced for consideration, what is your position on allowing such a business enterprise in Lathrup Village? Are you in favor or not, and why?
Good question. Am I in favor? I would honestly have to do a little bit more personal research. I don't have a very steadfast opinion for or against, but I would lean back to whatever the citizens would want, and I would do hopefully a little research to see how that could possibly, I would weigh the pros and cons of if a dispensary were to open in Lathrup Village. I don't have much personal experience with dispensaries, so I do not have a firm opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
It's an interesting question for a sitting city council person if that did come up anytime soon, so that would be kind of inappropriate. But I was not in favor for it before, believe it or not. So I would say that I would have to investigate it. And I, again, feel uncomfortable with saying one way or the other because I am a sitting council person right now.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I remember when the issue came up on the ballot, or before the issue came up on the ballot during the last election cycle, speaking with a city council person who said, the residents need to make the decision about this. And as a city council person, I would want to put aside my own feelings about whether I think these businesses are good or bad and focus on what the residents think about these businesses, if they're good or bad for the city. It's not about whether a cannabis dispensary is a okay and viable business. It's about whether it's the right type of business to put inside of our city. And the residents need to speak on that. The residents have already spoken on it, so I kind of feel like this question is moot. This decision has already been made, and we've moved on from it.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Knez.
Well, Jason is right. The decision was made by the voters, and that did put a 2-year moratorium on the businesses entering the city again. Should it come up and petitions circulate again, which they may or may not, because the businesses aren't doing that well anyway, if they want to re-enter, they will petition the city, and it will go up to vote again if the residents change their mind and want it back in here. As council members, we have a due diligence to accept the will of the voters and to work with the voters in your decision. Personally, I am against it, but I would definitely work with the marijuana facilities and with the voters to make it work in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Knez. Ms. Miller.
As has been widely circulated, I did not head up the petition drive against marijuana dispensaries, and I did not head up the opposition group. I brought attention to the process that was used. I was opposed to the process that was used to determine that we should have them, and then the ordinance that was drafted, the 20-page ordinance that was approved. There were promises of large amounts of money. That has not come to fruition. I had no opinion. If the residents, from the very beginning, I said residents need to vote on this. And eventually that happened, but that was not the case. I remember sitting in this room. We had 400 and some people who had signed a petition, and that petition was thrown out as council was up on a big screen like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, just ignoring what residents were asking for, just the option to be able to vote on the issue.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. And Mr. Weeks.
There was a referendum. Our residents voted against having marijuana dispensaries in our town. If our residents changed their mind and they desired to have dispensaries in town, I would listen to that, and I would reconsider. But the residents have spoken, and I think it's a mature business. You can hop on your bike and drive about a mile down 11 Mile, a mile down 12 Mile in either direction. There are plenty of facilities. I think we should seek other types of businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Garrett. What are you going to do to revitalize the Parks and Recreation Department and support various volunteer community organizations?
Well, we have something going on right now that it looks like it's only 6 people that that donated to revitalizing our parks. Something else is working with soccer. What I saw was they have it looks like a grant or something for a wildlife preserve, which I don't know if that was ever even looked at, but it's starting to be where I personally need to start attending something about Parks and Rec. We also would need to have at least a part-time Parks and Rec person to start getting more community events involved. We do have local community groups that are more than willing to help with doing community events, but it just seems like there's a divide that's going on. So one thing is that I'm looking forward. We have this Lathrup Village Festival coming up. I 100% support it. I hope that everyone will come out, and maybe this will be the bridge, or the bridge that will gap the issue with our community events. But we need to hire a Parks and Rec person.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, I agree. We need to hire at least a part-time Parks and Rec person. It's the city administrator's job to do that, not the city council's job. So it comes back to picking the right city administrator that is going to prioritize that, but also make tough decisions about how are we going to pay for it, right? We can't just say that we want to invest in things without providing ideas about how we're going to pay for them. So there's that we need to focus on. Partnering with community organizations is great. I happen to be part of a community of neighbors that have invested time in volunteering in our community. I am helping with the music festival because I want us to have an event like that that can bring people together from all over the city. As a resident, I'm happy to volunteer to do that, and I think if we're successful in doing an event like that, then we can do another and another and another. And so we got to encourage that type of behavior in the city, not diminish it.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Knez.
A couple of years ago, we had a budget of about $134,000 for our Parks and Rec department here in Lathrup Village. This last budget, I believe it's $18,000. In order to bridge that gap, so to speak, I have volunteered to be a liaison between the Parks and Rec and to promote some events. I was trying to do it monthly in the community through bingo. We did a trivia night. I'm willing to work with any resident who has any idea and who would like to support this. There is not the money, unfortunately, in the city to support it, but this could be something we could do as a community to volunteer to move these programs forward. I'm willing to work with anyone.
Thank you, Ms. Knez. Ms. Miller.
Parks and Rec has been a top priority for me from when I was campaigning the last time. I noticed the events were becoming less and less. The budget was being cut. We really have a non-existent public Parks and Recreation department, even though it's in our charter. That we have no activities for youth. We don't even have an outdoor basketball hoop. I mean, that is pathetic. I tried to work with a group that was going to come in. They were going to do some things for us, create programming, and I was totally ignored, blown off, whatever. So our farmers market is gone. Our holiday activities are weak. We spent $13,000 on Christmas decorations, but who saw them? There were no events here. There has been a lack of support for community organizations. Supper Club is gone, Women's Club is struggling, Lions Club is gone, Historical Society is struggling, Homeowners Association is struggling. We're doing free events for the Detroit metro area. We can't afford to do that. This event sounds fun, but we should be charging people. Like, why does everything have to be free?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
I would suggest a two-step approach here. Number one, form a volunteer board and have a staff liaison. First year, take a look at other communities, see what they're doing, identify best practices, events that are well attended, and give us the best bang for our buck. And then based on our findings, let's establish a funded set of events for the following year. But study first, implementation second.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. And Mr. Barksdale.
I am pro parks. I don't know many people that aren't, especially having a 2-year-old. We go to parks all the time. And I could see areas of improvement that our parks could have, and I know that that's not free. We would have to likely have someone in charge of that committee, and then fundraising events. And I hear a lot that a lot of the recreation events we have aren't well attended. I think perhaps maybe we need to ask our residents what they would want to see. I think people not attending things is a show that they may or may not want to do it, probably don't want to do it. So I think making sure that we target our recreational events to what our residents want, and maybe trying to reimagine or rebuild or revitalize the parks that we do have.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. We'll begin the next question with Mr. Hammond. Are you satisfied with the relationship between Lathrup Village and the Southfield Public Schools? Why or why not?
No, I am not. As a resident of the city, I am unsatisfied with our relationship with Southfield Public Schools because I don't feel like they take us seriously. I don't see them engaging with us Last time I noticed that they were engaged with us, at least in an official capacity in a city council meeting, it was to boisterously oppose a charter school that was maybe going to move into the Annie Lathrup school. So they come when there's an issue, but they're not here to engage with us and find out, well, what is it we want or need of them? They just passed a sinking bond millage in the last election cycle that I don't know if people in Lathrup Village supported it or not, as a majority. But it didn't matter because the number of people that vote in the city is so small compared to the number of people that vote in the Southfield. We're always going to be kind of shunned down. So I think that we can do much better in engaging with Southfield Public Schools. I'm not giving up the boat on that. I think that we can actually salvage that relationship. But right now, I am not satisfied.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Kinez.
I would agree with what the others say. It has been a difficult relationship with the school, trying to reach out to them for issues that our residents have. Closing the track behind Southfield Lathrop or the new university school was one issue. Residents made calls. They made attempts to negotiate times to be there. They've been using the track forever and a day, and all of a sudden, one day it's closed. And nobody's been willing to work with them or with us to try to resolve just a minor issue like that. And these are facilities that our tax dollars go towards as well.
Thank you, Ms. Kinez. Ms. Miller.
I have been on both sides of this issue, serving on the school board for 14 years and being on council. And there are things going on both sides. Lathrup Village hasn't been supportive of the school district for many years. There was talk a long time ago of seceding and going to Birmingham or whatever. We have so many people that use schools of choice, and I'm not questioning the decisions. I think that's sometimes perceptions lead to reality. Just recently, the school superintendent was publicly bashed by a council person, and so that kind of thing doesn't create good working relationships. As I said, I know there's blame on both sides, but we all have to come together to have the same goals and not against each other, which is what it has been in the past.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
I share Karen's passion for our public schools. I was involved for 16 years in strategic planning for Southfield Public Schools. I try to encourage Ken Siver and administration to develop an aggressive marketing communication program that would reach out to Lathrup Village and our residents and tell the positive story about Southfield Public Schools. It hasn't worked. We have an adversarial relationship with our public schools. I'm a public schools guy. The only reason I've made it in life is because of my working class public school education, which was a fabulous education. This is really a difficult problem to tackle. I don't have an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
I can't say that I know much about Lathrup's relationship with Southfield Public Schools, but I can guess that it's not the best from what I've heard. That being said, I probably shouldn't speak too much on it. I am a fan of public schooling and public schools being well-funded. I like children getting a chance to grow and learn. I'm the product of a public school locally. I wasn't fortunate enough to be raised in Lathrup Village, so I can't say I have ties at the moment, but I will once I need to.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. And Ms. Garrett.
Can you just repeat the question so I'm clear on what the question was?
Sure. Are you satisfied with the relationship between Lathrup Village and the Southfield Public Schools? Why or why not?
I'm not satisfied with it because we should have a better working relationship. That's why when I first became mayor that we started a Southfield Public Schools liaison that could go to the school board meetings and then come back and report out what was going on, and also to take our issues forward to Southfield Public Schools. That happened in the previous administration. Now, we have not had any contact with Southfield Public Schools, but I have been personally talking to the Southfield School Board president on a regular basis, trying to rectify this relationship and build us back to having a better relationship. We both have done the work in figuring out where did it start at and how can we resolve this issue that we have with our relationship. And it came back where no one knows this has been the way that it's been for a while. So right now, what I do is I work with the Southfield Public School Board president. I work with the superintendent. It doesn't matter about relationships or how you feel about something or someone. It's about getting the job done. And for Lathrup Village residents, I have gotten 2 students that could not get in school before into school because of those relationships with the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. We'll begin the last question now with Ms. Knez. What are your plans to dig us out of the budget deficit?
My plans? I think it starts with hiring a stellar new city administrator. When we are presented with a budget, I think as a council, we're going to need to start going through things with a fine-tooth comb. We are absolutely spending ourselves into financially irresponsible territory. We're dipping into our reserves, and we're not balancing our budgets. And as a council person, the only thing we can do is make hard and deliberate decisions when we decide what moves forward and what we have to cut in order to maintain our city and our city services and the quality of life we expect here in Lathrup Village.
Thank you, Ms. Knez. Ms. Miller.
I suggested this or promoted this when I ran the last time. It's priority-based budgeting, and that's where the community comes together, talks about what their priorities are, and then we fund those priorities. How many things are in our budget now that don't serve us, that don't meet our needs? They just carry over from year to year to year. I think we need to take a hard look at the money that's coming in. We have received more money. The housing values have gone way up. So there is more money to do some things with. But I don't think we've taken a good look at is what we're spending our money on meeting the needs of our residents. And I think that we need to do that. We need to have a community committee that comes together and talks about it and gets input from new residents, from longtime residents, from young people with families, from senior citizens, from all of the different groups and the very diverse groups that we have in Lathrup Village. And I think we all need to make those decisions together. What matters to us when spending our tax dollars?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Mr. Weeks.
A new city administrator with solid financial management skills, similar to what Karen said, zero-based budgeting. Eliminate what you, it's amazing. Back in 2007 to 2011, what we were facing with, looking at was a 40% reduction in revenues for our city. Can you imagine that? What we ended up doing, we ended up privatizing our public works department, but we didn't eliminate any jobs. We didn't eliminate any jobs. We didn't eliminate any services, and we just tried to figure out ways of doing things as smart and as efficiently as possible, and it worked.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Mr. Barksdale.
I think it starts with hiring a city administrator that has experience with the situation that we're in and trying to get us out of our budget deficit. I think making sure that we are funding what the citizens want and use and start to take funding away from what is no longer useful or what people don't want. And I think making smart decisions with the money that we do spend today with focus on the future. because patching holes up now isn't always the best future decision, and more times than not is very costly. So I think that making future forward decisions financially will help us as well.
Thank you, Mr. Barksdale. Ms. Garrett.
Well, one, I think that we all need to, well, whoever is on council, that we all need to have budget reviews more frequently than we do at the end of a budget cycle or at the beginning of a budget cycle. And all council people being involved with discussing that. It's also, we might have to make some really hard decisions on what type of services we can keep, what kind of services we can't keep. But again, it's all about, too, leveraging the resources we have through our other elected officials on how they can bring money back. For example, talking with the former state representative, Kyra Bowden, and talking to her and telling her what we need, she did bring money back for the state of Michigan for us. Because again, the relationships that are built with your local elected officials are paramount with everyone else. When I go back to saying the county, the state, the federal elected officials, you have to have that relationship to bring money in. You also have to figure out how you're going to work with the businesses to have new businesses coming into their location. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. And finally, Mr. Hammond.
I've said this earlier in this tonight. We need to prioritize experience working in a city government, in a city that has constrained budgets when we're hiring our next city administrator. That's got to be paramount. They have to have already done it and come with fresh ideas on how they dealt with that based on the experiences that they've had in the past. We do need to work smarter. That may mean, like, we can't maintain all of the services we have today at the level they're at right now. Nobody wants to hear that, but that might actually be the case. So we might have to take a hard look at changing how certain services are delivered. Maybe they're not as great as they are now. Maybe they'll be different, but at least we'll still have those services. While it may be true that the value of properties in the city is increasing and the tax revenues coming from them are increasing, it's not true that that money's coming to our city. It goes to the state. And so understanding how tax law works and how the taxes are distributed through our state, a city administrator with experience working a constrained budget will understand that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. That concludes the time for questions. I just wanted to clarify something that we talked about earlier. As we mentioned, you can vote for not more than 3 candidates, or up to 3 candidates. The 2 candidates that have the highest totals will have a 4-year term. And the third highest vote candidate will have a 2-year term. The candidates will now be given 1 minute to make a closing statement in the reverse order of the opening statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Weeks.
Really? First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this candidate forum. If I'm elected to City Council, I will try to help civility, try to have civility restored to City Council. We will select a city administrator who will serve our community well for at least the next 3 to 5 years. Without eliminating jobs, we will submit balanced budgets and live within our means. We will rebuild our fund balance, and we will establish the collaborative relationship we have enjoyed in the past between our City Council, our staff, and our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weeks. Ms. Miller.
I believe that connected communities are strong communities built to last. And we all know that Lathrup Village has been a strong, tight-knit community. But we've got some problems that are threatening our connection and our future. There's a lack of accountability to residents. There's a disconnect between city leadership and Lathrup Village residents. Decisions are being made that will negatively affect our future fiscal health. I don't think city leaders understand how democracy works. Residents deserve respect, they deserve to be heard, they deserve a voice in how their tax dollars are spent. I remain committed to the prospect that our city leadership can and must do better for all of our residents. We need to be accountable, accessible, and responsive. I will continue to ask tough questions about how your money is spent. I will continue to vote no if I don't think it's in the best interest of the community. If that's important to you, I hope I can count on your vote.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Canez.
When we say we're going home, we're not just referring to our house, but also our community. Home is the place we go for love and support, for nourishment and comfort, and for peace and rest. Lathrup Village has been my home for 62 years. It's a community that has always been a safe place to land. Of course, every community has its share of antagonists. Sadly, this group has mushroomed over the past several years. It's impossible to move a city forward when council members don't speak. When communication breaks down, our home becomes fractured and unstable. When we circulate divisive, deceitful, and hateful rhetoric, we lose credibility and we become unproductive and untrustworthy. This, too, contributes to a fractured and unstable home. Our home is in jeopardy. I say this with a heavy heart. We cannot maintain the status quo and expect to survive. We need change in leadership and vision. I am not a politician. This is not my stepping stone into a career in politics. My only desire is to continue to serve you in Lathrup Village, our collective home.
Thank you, Ms. Canez. Mr. Hammond.
Yeah, thank you all once again for being here this evening, and I want to congratulate everybody who's up here, all the candidates for City Council. It's no small thing to be willing to give so much of your time and energy to help lead this city. It's a sacrifice all of us up here are willing to make, and I'm thankful to all of you for that willingness. Being a part of a city council is a team game, not an individual game. When I played sports in high school, I didn't like all the kids on my teams, but when we were competing, we had each other's backs. We also held each other accountable for our roles on the team. Being on a team doesn't mean you agree with everything, that you agree on all the issues, but it does mean that you stand together and you stand behind the results, win or lose, good or bad. And that's what my coaches taught me. If you choose to elect me, I promise I will consider every opinion presented to me by a resident, a business owner, or a council member, or city staff, and I will give them very careful consideration. And I will stand behind the decisions our council makes and the results they deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Ms. Garrett.
I ask for your vote again because I am committed to Lathrup Village. I have been a public servant to all of you all for the last 12 years. And I say public servant because it doesn't matter how you feel about me. It doesn't matter what you say about me. I'm here to serve you regardless. So I believe in all residents. I believe in all businesses and helping everyone. Whoever contacts me, I'm going to help you regardless of how your feelings are for me. And that's how it should be when someone is a public servant. I'm not a career politician. That's why I have an outside job, and I've had outside jobs. I have taken my education and my experiences and brought them to you so I can do the best that I can. And sometimes, yes, we do fail, but we're also human. And so I'm asking you for your vote again is because I do have the experience. I do have your best interest at heart, and I will do the best job that I am capable and able to do to make sure that you are satisfied of living in the city of Lathrup Village. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett. And finally, Mr. Barksdale.
I am excited to listen to, work with, and work for the citizens of Lathrup Village in order to continue to keep Lathrup Village a wonderful, wonderful place to live. I value working with, I will value working with the rest of the council and staff to make sure that we're working towards what our citizens want. I value working in teams, and I like to work together as opposed to be divisive.
Thank you, Mr. Bark. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, don't. Thanks everybody for coming out.
Is that it, Mr. Thank you.
I'm okay.
The League of Women Voters would like to thank the audience, the candidates, and Lathrup Village TV for making this forum possible. This presentation is copyrighted 2023 by the League of Women Voters. All rights are reserved. Any recording of this forum can only be shown in its entirety. Rebroadcast times of this forum will be on the League of Women Voters website, that's lwvoa.org, and on YouTube. The League of Women Voters is funded by contributions from concerned businesses and citizens. Our membership is open to men and women over the age of 16. And please remember to vote on November 7th. Good evening.